It's another year, another opportunity for Obama to share very important content with us in the form of his reading list, I guess, his recommended books, and also his mixtape. So why don't we talk about that a little bit? It always shocks me that people even care, but I guess they do. Who knows? I mean, there's a reason why they keep doing this, right? But I want to juxtapose that with something that Kale also brought to our attention. So let's get started. Let's talk about it. So there's a new New York Times graphic that details economic inequality in America. We know that economic inequality exists. Unfortunately, during the coronavirus pandemic, it was further exacerbated with the wealthiest individuals hoarding additional wealth, while poor people, of course, working people, had to bear the economic burdens and brunt of this pandemic. With that said, let's take a quick look at that graphic because it shows you a little of what's covered in this article. So scroll down. Okay, conventional wisdom. There we go. So you see that graphic and it shows the share of net worth. By the start of 2021, the richest 1% of Americans held 32% of the nation's wealth. Sounds great. Its highest level since these records began in 1989. These interactive, graphics are a lot of fun. Yeah. The bottom 50%, meanwhile, held just 2% of the nation's wealth. This new record
game right there. That's the game right there, right?
Yep.
Like, that's everything. I mean, is there anything else even worth talking about? I mean, we fight about all this stuff, and that's the thing. I'll never forget when Comrade Obama, got up there and said that economic inequality was the defining issue of our time, as if he wasn't elected on a wave of discontent that was fueled by both our disastrous wars abroad, but more importantly, the economic meltdown caused by the 2008 financial crisis. Running on a platform of hope and change, this was going to change. We're going to change this. We're going to change this reality. And not only did he not change it, he probably supercharged it.
Yeah, I mean, and I want everyone to kind of keep this information, this data in mind as we talk about other topics throughout the show today, because, there's calls for regime change in Cuba, and we're going to get into that in more detail. And the whole argument by Cubans in South Florida especially is that, it's a failed economic system. Socialism is a failed economic system, and that's why Cubans are taking to the streets. I mean, you look at that graph, and are you going to argue that we don't have a failed economic system in place where during a global pandemic, the richest people continue to hoard the wealth, continue to get even richer, while working Americans lose more and more and more? I mean, the situation continues to devolve under a capitalistic model, right? And anyway, it's super frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of Cuba's failed economic model, and no mention of the other big country that's in the news. I did my decode on it last week. Is Haiti? Capitalist economy, total U.S. client state, or not U.S. client state, U.S. kind of under U.S. domination for decades. Poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, extreme levels of inequality, corruption, poverty, all the things you can attribute with that. And no one says it's a failure of their economics model.
No one. No. It's incredible. So
it's just that there's corruption, that's the only thing,
So you have Obama saying that, inequality is such an important issue that he apparently had no control over as the most powerful man in the world, not for 4 years, but for 8 years straight. But let's just forget about all of that. And let's focus on what Obama is reading and what kind of music he's listening to. These lists come out ever so often. I don't know if it's every year. I usually ignore it because I don't care. But why don't we talk a little bit about what books he's recommending? So there we go. Barack Obama's summer reading list. This was posted on his Instagram page. At night, all blood is black.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read any of these books, Nando?
No. I have not read any of them. I know that Obama hasn't read them either. I mean, that's my big thing with especially Obama's reading lists, because they're always so long. Like I'll never forget. I got in a fight with a couple people at the place that I was working at because I tweeted out in 2019 that because Obama tweeted out like a list of all the books he'd read, including one called Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff, I think. And it's like this huge dense book that there's just like a 0% chance that he sat down and read, because he's Obama, he's got busy doing other stuff. He's just like the amount of books that were on his list, and not like all the books he's read in the year, just his favorite ones, implying that there was many more that he read, which did not make the list. There were something like 30 books on there. And I just I know Obama is not reading 3 books a month. Like, I know he's not reading a book a week. Like, this is his staff, curating a list.
Yes, that's
in a perfect way that kind of is both ideologically kind of samples a little bit from this side, a little bit from that side, shows that he's like not beholden to any one thing, but is also crucially gender perfect, and that it's like, it's not like all white men or anything like that. Like he needs like an appropriate kind of panoply of different races and genders to ensure that there's like a certain amount of inclusivity. Like I guarantee you, they're like, oh, this year's reading list, Obama, you got too many white men on it. You gotta dump these 2 and put some other 2 because how is that gonna look? Like it's just so obvious that this is all fake. That this is just all fake. That this is just not really what he reads or liked. That it's just a produced, manufactured thing to make him seem like he's the kind of guy that liberals want to believe he is. This kind of, media savvy, urbane guy who reads the same thing that they do, but slightly at a higher level, slightly more difficult books than they read, but like kind of in the same world, watches the same TV shows that you watch, engages with the
just
same
like
media.
Us.
Just like us, because that's all we got in politics, baby. It's all just media.
Totally.
And not just that, but it's just so infantilizing. Like the media culture that we have is so infantilizing these days, in which everything has to be like perfectly on the nose. Like this person is good, that person is bad, and he is participating that and regurgitating it back to us in such a obviously cynical way, and people just lap it up. They lap it up. They love it. The liberals, they love it, and it just drives me crazy.
But so when you say the liberals, because I got to be honest with you, do ordinary people, even those who self-identify as liberals, care at all? Because, I mean, I'm obviously speaking from my own personal bias here. I don't identify as a liberal, but nonetheless, like, I don't care, right? Like, these lists come out, and I just kind of like, I don't even look at it ever, with the exception of this show, because we're talking about it right now. Like, who cares? Ordinary people don't care.
I mean, I wouldn't say like ordinary people, but people that are very invested in kind of the Democratic Party, the kind of people that have like a Ruth Bader Ginsburg poster on their wall or whatever, like those people care about that stuff. They really do.
It's amazing.
And Obama is very good at managing his image and celebrity. And if it didn't matter and nobody cared, he wouldn't do it, because he is pretty savvy in that sense. Like he understands the audience that he's playing to. You're not that audience. Like you're not that person. But the kind of person who like loves MSNBC and like subscribes to the New York Times because like that's like, fighting against fascism. That's how you do it. You subscribe to the New York Times. Like that kind of person like loves that shit. They love it. They love it. They love it. And you see people like on Twitter, like, the kind of liberal partisan, consent manufacturers debating Obama's reading list in a kind of serious way, like as if they were like, oh, look, he's, like he's read this. That means he's grappling with so-and-so's ideas about whatever the fuck. And I'm like, you're an idiot. You're like, maybe a staffer read it and just gave him like a 2-paragraph synopsis in case anyone asked him about it at a party. And he could just like say the 2 things that kind of indicated that he read it, but it's just such obvious bullshit. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, don't worry. he also released a list of songs that he likes in his playlist. So I might be more familiar with some of the stuff. No, I know Desperado. Okay, got that.
Yeah, Migos, Rihanna, the Rolling Stones. Again, see, he is the perfect, it's just the perfect, Miles Davis, Bob Marley and the Wailers. Ooh, it's just the perfect mix of I'm signaling that I'm still kind of young and with it. But I'm also a boomer and I like my boomer stuff. I also like Erykah Badu, I still listen to I don't know. It's all just so obviously perfectly manufactured and curated. I'm thinking about Mike. I'm just trying to imagine doing parodying Obama's summer playlist and what it would be Nation of Islam Obama's summer playlist and reading list. And,
totally.
What would it be I was on NWA, fuck the police. I don't agree with defund the police, but
Oh my God, it's so true. By the way, there is a reading list with I think about 100 books that Matt Leck and David Griscom and I believe Leisha, his sister, released after he passed away. Highly recommend checking out the books in that list. Of course, he was on point and he actually did read those books and would vouch for them. And so to wrap up this story or this segment, why don't we share a book that's had a lot of influence on us, right? Politically speaking, or a book that, we think is worth reading. There's so many, obviously, with politics, there's so many different angles to cover. Shock Doctrine, I think, is a essential read for everyone, especially right now in understanding why it's so disastrous for the United States to intervene militarily or anyway, in attempting to topple a regime. Anyway, so there's that. But I would say for me, the book that I think about a lot lately is Bright-Sided. And I know I've plugged that book a lot on this show, but Bright-Sided by Barbara Ehrenreich. Yeah. It's just such an important book in understanding the culture around us, right? The corporate culture, but more importantly, this culture of faux positivity and how it's meant to make you submissive to this system that's screwing you, And Barbara, come on the show. I want to interview you so badly. I would love it. But please read Bright-Sided. It's one of my favorite books.
I recommend to everyone that they read Eric Hobsbawm's kind of history of the, starting from the essentially the French Revolution through the end of the Cold War, especially the final one, which is called Age of Extremes. I believe it's called the Age of Extremes, a history of the short 20th, what he calls the short 20th century. In Hobsbawm's view, the 20th century starts with the Russian Revolution and ends with the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. And it's just a history of the world during that period, all of it. He takes it's a tour to, all over the world. Kind of goes through the end of the First World War and the Second World War, but just a history of all of it, and it's just so breathtakingly coherent. His command of just all of it is incredible, and he's just a very fun writer. He had a very good writing style. He had this kind of just such a way, these clever turns of phrases. I don't know. If you want to just understand history, you have to read one book. Not specifically about American history. With American history, I always recommend the Robert Caro books.
Yes,
you've read them. But
huge fan.
They were great. I mean, they're addicting. You just can't stop reading them. But the Hobsbawm books, I really recommend, especially the last one, Age of Extremes. I mean, he has the Age of Revolution, which is French Revolution and the the revolutions of 1830 and 1848. The Age of Capital, which is when capitalism really kind of took hold in Europe and in America and imposed itself. And then the Age of Empire, which was when Europe kind of took over the rest of the world, and then or Britain and capitalism really took over the rest of the world, and then the Age of Extremes, which is the 20th century, which is just the most remarkable century you can. So yeah, Eric Hobsbawm's books I recommend a lot.
I'm just to jump in. This is like super nerdy, but Age of Revolution is actually my anticipated book read next week. So
you haven't read it
on the beach? No, I haven't. I've been meaning to read Hobsbawm. I mean, I've read a couple.
Have you read any of those other ones?
No, none on the series. I've read some of his other works. So like Nations and Nationalism is one of the most incredible books I've ever read. So I'll throw that one in. Another Hobsbawm.
He's like a good, like he's a good writer. Like apart from being a good historian, you know,
he's like
Kale. This is maybe we could read that book together. Like we've been talking about doing like a book club type situation, but we haven't really like settled on a book. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is what we do.
Do some Hobsbawm. That would rule. Yeah, we should. I mean, we should just do a Jacobin book club. I mean, we should do it, but then you, the audience, should also read it.
Yeah,
so you read it and then let us know what you think, and somehow we'll all morph into one eventually. I wanted to just, before we go on to the next thing, I did want to go back to that New York Times graph one more time, actually, just because there's one more thing at the end that I think is really worth looking at, which is that that since the start of 2020, the bottom 50% of the population gained $700 billion in wealth, which, cool, that's great. But
nothing compared to the wealthy.
Yeah, the richest 1% gained 10 trillion. So
10 trillion. Come on down. Congratulations. You did it. That's
you know, we're back in the age of capital. So anyways,
markets are rational. I mean, the markets have decided that all that wealth should float all the way to the top. That's just the way it works. Much better system than what you see in other countries like Cuba.